This is Eric. How's it going? One of my friends recently purchased a Rimac valve spring tester and put together a video on how to use it. I found this very useful and I hope you do too.
I'm doing the final um, compression check on the valve springs before I assemble the heads. I went ahead and decided to verify them again. I think this is the third time I've done them, but I figured I'd show the process that I'm using. I have a old Rimac spring tester. I have it calibrated with a set of gauge blocks, 1" 700 high. I have this set so that when my dial indicator sits on the 300 mark right there, just right about there. This gauge is the set height, and then it still reads 0 on my test. I also, if anybody's using one of these, they're fantastic. You'll get a reference between every single one of your springs, but you need to know whether or not this gauge is set correctly. To do that, I picked up a Crower from Summit Racing, a Crower calibration spring. And what you get for less than $15 is you get a spring, a calibration spring, and then you also get a chart in it that tells you in hundred thousandths increments what the weight, the PSI rating is. So I calibrated this to verify that I was indeed within, 1 or 2 PSI across the entire range. So for over 500 thousandths lift, I was 2 PSI off on one and 0 on all the others. So I use that first to set this up. Highly recommend that you get one of those if you have a Rimac or you have any kind of a gauge to check. You need to be able to reference that and know it's set correctly. On the Rimacs, there is a adjustment lever right down here that you slide and it moves the dial, not the pointer, but it moves the actual scale, the grid, to the needle point. So with that, I was taking my let's see here, we'll take I've already done these, so I'm going to take number 6. And you'll see on my box here I have them numbered 1 through 8. And then on the other side it's 9 through 16, so I know exactly which spring is which. So number 6 I'll take out. And what I did first is I went through and compressed it 5 times to almost coil bind, just to make sure that the tension in the spring has been relieved. I put that in this little fixture. Now this I made up, so you can use anything. You put them in a vise and do it. But I just put this in my drill press, and then I just went 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that compressed that 5 times, get that spring kind of warmed up. And then I went ahead and put it on my Rimac gauge and set it in the middle, and then took my compression and went down. I was supposed to be 105 is where I'm taking my readings. A lot of people do this a little differently, but I actually went to 105, and then I took my reading off the gauge, which shows 16, and on my paper here I wrote 17, so there's a little bit of difference, but not much. I also then went further, and I actually checked it out, would be my full lift, which would be like 280. 285. So I went down to 280 and took the reading. This shows minus 492, and I had 490. So once again, very close in reading, and it repeats relatively well for you to get your values, so you can set your shims. So that was how I did all of my springs. I made up a spreadsheet and printed it out. Just so I had something to write on. So I wrote all my dimensions on there, and then I will take this and I will go back and put that into my spreadsheet. I can figure out what shims I need at which location on my head, so that I get them all set at 105. And that's the way I am setting this up. That is it.